Haymitch wasn't just a victor, he was a target, and Snow made that very clear. Spoiler warning for Sunrise on the Reaping, save this and watch it later if you need to. Snow didn't just randomly throw up in front of Haymitch, he wanted him to see it. Why? Let me explain. Short answer, he's an arrogant freak and saw it as a flex, at least in my opinion. Poisoning people and himself seems to be a regular thing for Snow based on what Finnick shared in Mockingjay. He pointed out case after case of the mysterious deaths of Snow's adversaries, or even worse, his allies who had the potential to become threats. People dropping dead at a feast, or slowly, inexplicably declining into shadows over a period of months, blamed on bad shellfish, elusive viruses, or an overlooked weakness in the aorta. Snow drinking from the poisoned cup himself to deflect suspicion. Snow has a list, and no one knows who will be next. By the second quarter quell, Snow had been poisoning people for 40 years as he rose to power and became president. We don't know exactly how old he was when he came into power, but he was a young man. So he needed to figure out how he wanted to play it when the antidotes didn't stop him from having physical side effects, or if he needed to have physical side effects to go along with the story of the poisoning. The blasé way he's acting in front of Haymitch and Plutarch makes it seem like throwing up from the poison and blaming it on unplanned food poisoning is something he's done before. Seems like Snow's routine for a fake food poisoning scenario is having people see him like this as evidence that there wasn't foul play behind his target's poisoning. And the poison didn't necessarily need to be put into someone's cup. I think putting it in a dipping sauce for the oysters makes sense in this scenario. Anyway, Snow cared about deflecting suspicion that he poisoned people, but he could also want certain people to know what he did as a way to threaten them and manipulate them. There's two ways he can use his visible illness, depending on who sees it. It's useful to deflect suspicion to the people Snow wanted to stay on his side that he didn't see as a threat, and it can be used as a warning and demonstration of his power to the people Snow wanted to intimidate, or sort of a combination of all of that, which is what I think he's doing with Haymitch and Plutarch. Let's walk through the scene. Snow shows up at Plutarch's place looking a mess. He's clearly unwell, perspiring and breathless and white as a sheet. He hunches over his gut. For once, despite his cosmetic treatments, he looks his 58 years. I love whenever someone points out Snow's yassification. Katniss pointed out his lip injections every chance she got. And reminder, one time Snow kissed Katniss on the cheek. It was when he was congratulating her and Peeta on their engagement. He plants a puffy kiss on her cheek before digging his fingers into her arms and smiling and shaking his head at her to mean that she failed at convincing everyone of her love for Peeta. Scary! Anyways, Snow is visibly ill. We know Plutarch is an undercover rebel, so it's hard to gauge his genuine reaction in the situation. He's showing concern for Snow, trying to help him get more comfortable. At first, he's blaming Snow's condition on the heat. I believe Plutarch knew Snow's poisoning shtick and is keeping up appearances as an unsuspecting loyalist. And then Snow's body temporarily seizes up and red stuff is coming out of his mouth, and then he throws up into a fountain. Plutarch's reaction is so funny to me. He just says, "Oh, okay." So real. And Snow's reaction is key here. There's no embarrassment or apology, no effort to disguise this moment of weakness. It's almost like he wants us to see it. He's barfing with confidence. He's showing that even when he's sick, he is still in control. Snow has supreme power no matter what. That's the image Snow's trying to project. Haymitch thinks that Snow is having a moment of weakness, but by acting so unbothered, it kind of cancels it out. Snow is panting now, and Plutarch and Haymitch lift him up out of his chair and walk him into another room where it's cooler. Plutarch starts doing this without question, like Snow is the king and he is his servant. Plutarch basically orders Haymitch to step in to help also. They're at his side despite how barfy he smells. Snow could also be playing up this weakness too. The throw up is definitely real, but he could be pretending to need help walking to assert his dominance. I know it seems like the opposite, that he is weak and Plutarch and Haymitch are his strong saviors, but it's a manipulation. He knows Haymitch hates him, and here he is, up close and personal, helping him, submitting to him. Briefly, Haymitch does feel braver, thinking how Snow is just a man as mortal as the rest of us. Haymitch drops his guard a little, which no one should do around Snow. Plutarch continues playing the role of loyal servant, tracking down his requested milk, and Haymitch, feeling emboldened, purposely takes his time getting the milk and then covertly chugging all of it as an FU. I'm praying this is in the movie. movie. It's hilarious. Plutarch definitely seems to know what Haymitch did, but he plays it cool since he needs Haymitch to trust him and he doesn't want to piss off Snow. And then he blames his servants and goes off to find more milk. So then Snow and Haymitch were alone together. And Snow gets sick again, just dumping out a crystal bowl of waxed pears and barfs into it. I'm just picturing him saying, I threw up. And I bet he likes making a mess like this at Plutarch's. He's envious of the family's extreme wealth, so defiling their fancy fountain and crystal bowls would be satisfying to him in a petty way. Like, you may be rich, but I'm the president. I will barf on your furniture. Haymitch is watching Snow be sick, and he's thinking he might be dying, and he's surprised at himself that he's able to resist helping him, thinking how Luella's death has changed him, and maybe he is victor material after all. But it makes sense that he would want revenge because of what happened to Luella. I don't think this is Haymitch turning to the dark side. It's more of a self-judgment. Then Snow alludes to taking out Incitatus Lumi, or Incitatus, I do not know how you say that name, the parade master. He says to Haymitch, sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. And Haymitch asks, what disease? Incompetence. You can't ignore it or it spreads. Snow means the cure is poisoning Lumi, whose disease was leading the disastrous tribute parade. When Plutarch comes back, Snow says how he has food poisoning from bad oysters, but he's fared far better than Incitatus Lumi, explicitly name-dropping him. And from what he just said to Haymitch about curing incompetence, I think it's fair to say he's implying he poisoned Lumi, or hurt him in some way, flexing his power, trying to scare Haymitch. I think Snow doesn't want Plutarch to know that, though, since he doesn't say the cure thing in front of him. But Plutarch knows what's up, and is hiding it. And then Snow acts like he didn't even know Lumi was the parade master. He sends Plutarch off for some bread and more milk, so he has Haymitch alone again. Reminder, bread and milk does not protect you from poison, but it can help settle your stomach. Snow has a little bottle with the implied poison antidote. Then Snow and Haymitch have the whole conversation about the covey and Lenore Dove. Snow unsettles Haymitch by how much he knows about 12 and the covey. Haymitch thinks all this information is from surveillance tactics, and yes, some of it is from the footage that Plutarch got of Haymitch, but there's also Snow's personal experiences that he doesn't know about. Snow gets to pair this message of being all-knowing and all-powerful even when he's ill, and the reason that he is ill is because he just got done killing someone. It's creepy as hell, and Snow loves that kind of stuff. He's also fully regained his composure by the time they have this conversation. He's not retching or anything, he just has a little nasty red spittle leaking from his mouth. Snow's unshaken, back to his usual scary self, and tells Haymitch he's guaranteed to die in the games for his behavior. But to prevent this death sentence from getting Haymitch to act out even more, Snow tells him that the level of agony he'll endure depends on how he acts from there on out, reminding him how his death will be seen by his loved ones. And how does he want them to remember him? And he twists the knife, saying Haymitch should thank him for giving him this option of how he'll die. He even says Snow lands on top. And then he brings out Lulu, who he describes as a belated birthday gift. Horrifying mic drop. This is gonna be so scary in the movie. I'm not ready. Snow could have definitely had this whole conversation with Haymitch and have it be extremely effective without being a poisoned mess, but it added a little extra spice. And maybe Snow has a busy schedule, so he's like, I have to poison him, now I have to make this clone, now I have to reveal it to Haymitch. Ha ha ha. I genuinely think in Snow's twisted way, he gets an ego boost out of being sick in front of people. What do you think about this whole scene? Do you think Plutarch knew what Snow did? Do you think Snow had other intentions for being sick? Let me know in the comments. What was the purpose of Snow showing Haymitch the footage of Lucy Gray's interview song? Short answer, he's a sadistic freak. But here's the long answer. First of all, this had to specifically be orchestrated by Snow. The footage of the 10th games had been erased. Every last copy gone, never to be aired again, except for a master copy kept in a vault for Dr. Gall's personal amusement. I'm assuming Gall is gone by this point. She was an old woman in the 10th game, so she's probably dead by the 50th. So once Snow was president, he would definitely have access to that vault, and I wouldn't be surprised if he snatched up that footage and kept it on his bedside table to hate watch at his leisure. Originally, when Snow spoke to Haymitch before the game started, when they were at Plutarch's, he told him his fate was sealed, that he would die in the games for his display with Luella, and by Haymitch dying, Lenore Dove and his family should be free to enjoy long and happy lives. But I imagine at some point during the 50th games, Snow changed his mind and actually wanted Haymitch to win. I imagine he wanted to punish him as intensely as possible, give Haymitch a life of suffering versus death. Plus, by crowning Haymitch the victor, Snow would have the win-win situation of torture torturing Haymitch and killing a covey girl at the same time. And Lenore Dove was a bear too, so that connection to his arch nemesis Lucy Gray was even bigger. Snow's an obsessive weirdo till the end. By the time Haymitch has won and is being held in the tribute quarters, I'm sure Snow's plans to kill Lenore Dove and his family were well underway. He's playing with Haymitch during that time too, giving him bread and milk to eat and then showing him the Lucy Gray footage. There's a dual purpose of giving Haymitch that bread and milk. It reminds him of his earlier interaction with Snow, teasing him about what's to come with the gumdrops. It's like an inside joke for Snow. The Capitol needed Haymitch to be at least healthy enough to be presentable for the cameras once it was time to do all the post-game stuff. Haymitch going on a bland diet of easy-to-digest food after having major intestinal surgery makes sense, assuming he doesn't have any lactose intolerance issues. Did they have oat milk in the Capitol? Later, during Haymitch's imprisonment, is when Snow's getting crafty with the television. It's turning on and off on its own, and it can't be controlled with the remote. The clips are specifically meant to psychologically torment Haymitch. They're curated clips from old Hunger Games, gory snippets, terrorized children, despair. Snow can even watch Haymitch's reactions to them through the surveillance cameras if he's in the mood, feeling a little frisky. Then, one night, Haymitch wakes up from a dream about Lenore Dove, and on screen, a girl in a rainbow of ruffles sings a familiar tune with unfamiliar words. It's Lucy Gray. When Haymitch watches the video, he is certain that she's a covey girl. And he doesn't actually get to see young Snow in the video. He can see a silhouette of a man, upright, trim, a crown of curls. And right when he steps forward into the light, the clip ends. I don't think Snow ended the clip there because he was trying to hide his connection. He already gave Haymitch plenty of details to connect the dots that Snow knew a covey girl. My reasoning is that Snow felt vulnerable or embarrassed showing Haymitch the younger version of himself smiling next to Lucy Gray. He probably hates looking at himself next to her, period. He believes she made a fool out of him. She is his greatest shame. Haymitch draws the conclusion that Lucy Gray is the mysterious District 12 victor and realizes why Lenore Dove never wanted to talk about her. That whatever became of Lucy Gray is a painful secret story the Covey keeps to themselves. Haymitch was spiraling about what awful thing happened to her and what she did to be erased so completely, which makes him even more afraid about what's going to happen to him. Snow's terrorizing him, sending a message that he can do whatever he wants to Haymitch and Lenore Dove, and nobody will ever know. He can erase them, just like Lucy Gray Baird. Based on the details Snow knew about the Coveys during his conversation with Haymitch, he's able to make that connection that Snow had been close with this rainbow girl and that they would have been around the same age at the time. The way Snow spoke about Lucy Gray is so embarrassing and pathetic. Bet I know a thing or two about your Dove. She's delightful to look at. You love her, and oh, how she seems to love you. It's been 40 years, man. And Lucy Gray's probably the only girl who rejected him ever, since he swore off having any emotional connections to women after Lucy Gray, since love made him feel stupid and vulnerable. This part from the ballad epilogue is so nuts, I just have to read it. If he ever married, he'd choose someone incapable of swaying his heart, someone he hated even, so they could never manipulate him the way Lucy Gray had, never make him feel jealous or weak. He actively wanted to marry someone he hated. Snow always paints himself as either the victim or the hero. Everything he does is justified or was done to him. Snow also chose to show Haymitch that clip of Lucy Gray at a specific time, the day of his post-games recap show. He wanted to scare Haymitch into submission as much as possible for the cameras, and so he'd play the role they've rewritten for him in the edit of his games. Right after Haymitch saw that clip, he loses it and starts breaking a bunch of furniture, and he only stops when peacekeepers show up at his door and shoot above his head. And his prep team is also there with the peacekeepers since it's time to get him ready to go on stage. Seems like there was just a couple minutes between Haymitch watching that tape and the prep team showing up. The timing is significant. Haymitch's fears about what Snow will do to Lenore Dove is fresh on his mind. This makes him especially motivated to behave for the Capitol cameras and events. I don't think he really needed to see the clip in order to cooperate. He knew he was screwed by that point, but Snow can't resist twisting the knife. He even put Haymitch in a literal cage during a party. He's a sadist. I wonder who Snow gave these sort of orders to, like, to make this all happen. I just imagine Snow in his office, like, ringing a bell, and a personal assistant comes in, and he hands him a flash drive with a Lucy Gray clip and says, "Hey, will you put this on the TV in the new Victor's room? And can you get a huge cage to put him in during the party later?" So weird. Who do you think was responsible for doing all of this? And like, how much do you think Snow was part of it? I like to believe Snow was deeply involved because the covey of it all made him very personally invested in Haymitch. Do you have any other ideas of what Snow's intentions were showing Haymitch that Lucy Gray footage? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more Hunger Games analysis content and do the thumbs up thing.